right, it is film series catch-up time. The It edition. The It edition. Hey everyone, it is Shannon, and I'm super excited to be here today and to share with you this vlog, which will be me rewatching chapter 1 of It and then watching for the first time chapter 2 of It. I'm really excited to do this. I really enjoy doing these videos. I haven't done one for quite some time, and I like to do this to encourage myself to finish film series. So I'm just going to talk a little bit about like it in general, and then I will go watch It chapter 1, come back, share my thoughts, go watch chapter 2, come back and share my thoughts. That's how these vlogs work. So it is adapted from the Stephen King novel, and I have read it. I read it when I was a teenager, like a young teenager. My whole siblings, we all read it together, and I think I read it a little too young to be reading a 1,000-page novel by Stephen King, but what can you do? I remember really enjoying it. I remember being really engaged by it, engaged by the story, really loved the sort of cast of characters, and I felt that it was really scary when I read it. I don't read a lot of horror anymore. I'm more likely to read urban fantasy, which is sort of, it can be horror-y depending on the title, but straight up horror I don't tend to read a lot of anymore. I just find it too scary. But I still love scary movies, so this is a great place to do this. So these will be spoilery. I will be talking content of the stories, and I'm looking forward to this. These movies are pretty long. I did buy this 2-in-1. Okay, so I'm going to show the DVD cover, which does have a clown on it, and I know a lot of people don't like clowns, so if you don't want to see a clown, you've been warned. But I did buy this 2-film collection, and it has both movies in it, and the first one is 2 hours and 15 minutes, and the second one is 2 hours and 49 minutes. So I'm going to do this over 2 days or more if it takes me that long, and I'm really looking forward to it. The first one, if I remember correctly, so I'm going to go into spoilers now in terms of my memory of the movies, and maybe a little bit about the books. So the first film, if I remember right, and if the picture on the back indicates, it is about the group of friends as they are kids, and then I think the second film is about them as adults. And it's interesting because, and so this is the poster for the first movie, which I think is a really great poster. And I think it's interesting because the book, if memory serves, so spoilers for the book. If the memory serves, the book starts with them as adults and then remembering childhood, and I think it goes back and forth, but it has been a long time since I have read it. So it's interesting that this chose to do them as kids and then as adults. So I am really happy to be going back and rewatching chapter 1 before watching chapter 2, because it's been a couple of years since I've seen chapter 1, and I don't remember the characters that well. Like, there's a couple of characters I remember, but not well. But when it's a group, like, I want to know who's who. I want to remember who they are as individuals, and because that will impact, how I feel about the second movies and movie. And yeah, so anyway, so I am going to go watch it chapter 1 and then share my thoughts on that. I'm so excited to be doing this. I'm really happy to be finishing off this film series. I have a couple of different film series in the plans, but I thought this would be a fun one to start with, especially because it's just 2 films, and I own them both. I got them. I just went DVD. This is like no fuss, no muss, just 2 DVDs, and that is totally fine with me. I want to see the movie. And this was about the same price as, I think it was a little bit cheaper than buying them off of Google Play, and I'm like, well, and if this, I can share it, it's easier to share that than share digitally, but I don't really, to me, format is not, as long as I get to see it, I'm not a super, I'm not a collector. I want to see the movie. So anyway, I'm going to go do that. Wish me luck. I hope I don't get too scared, but I probably will. So I will be back soon after I've seen the movie. Thanks for watching, and I'll be back soon. Hey everyone, I have finished watching chapter 1 of It, and wow, very interesting. But before I get into that, I'm just wanting to give a forewarning. I am going to move over here, and on the screen there will be a clown. So if you don't want to see any clowns, then, skip ahead or put something in front of the visual or just look at a different window or whatever. So you have been forewarned. It's pretty obscured, but it definitely is a clown. So I am now moving and the clown will appear. So that makes it even creepier. And then there was a sound over there. Now I'm all creeped out. Oh my gosh. Okay, so It Chapter 1. Just another FYI, these will be spoilery. I will be talking about the content of the film and potentially my memories of the book, which has been a long, long time since I have read it, but there you have it. So this was a rewatch for me, and I did enjoy it. It was longer than I knew it was long, but I thought it was sort of wrapping up, and then there was but I'm like, there's a whole other section, and it's true, there's a whole other section, and I find a lot of movies are that way these days, like they feel like they're an hour and a half, and then there's a whole other 40 minutes, so I don't know. Anyway, that being said, I felt like they would have had a lot more, I don't know, there's a fair amount of strong establishing stuff with the characters, but I do feel like I wish that there was more time spent with all of the characters, especially sort of the friend group. I'm sort of jumping around here. First off, I was right into the story right away. I was going into it, it was kind of like, how much am I going to remember? I'm not sure. It's been a while since I've watched it, a couple years since I watched this, and then lots and lots and lots of years since I read it. But then once, Bill is making Georgie the boat, and Georgie's in his little slicker, and it's raining out, and I'm like, oh yeah, I know where we're going with this. He's going, and the sewer, and Pennywise, and this is going to be scary, and it was, and I didn't remember a lot of it, but he's Pennywise talking to him through the sewer. It's so creepy, and I remember it being creepy when I read it, and when I imagine when I watch this, and then it's just so creepy. It's so creepy. So yeah, so Georgie ends up in the sewer. Pennywise gets him. But then it's like, what happened? Is he missing? In this town of Derry, a fair amount of people go missing. And then as the story unfolds, Ben, who is the sort of looks a lot up on the town history, notices that this sort of happens every 27 years, that there is a larger amount of people, there's a larger events happen. I don't think it's the amount of people that go missing. Derry just has a higher percentage of people that go missing or have things happen to them. And then kids, it's exponentially higher. So, the threat level is high for this group, and also the very, very clear pretty early on, but also sprinkled throughout the film, there is no help from the adults. There is no help. Most of the parents, the parents are either withdrawn or abusive, and there is definitely abuse in this. There is bullying in this. This is extremely gory. This is not an everyday view. This is for people who enjoy horror. I can't imagine anyone who doesn't watch horror watching this. There was one scene that was so gory that it rivals some of the goriest scenes I've ever seen. So I didn't remember it. It kept going, and I was like, oh my god, it's just it rivals Nightmare on Elm Street. It's just wow. So anyway, but yeah, so we follow this sort of group of friends, and it's a group of 7, but it's weird. I didn't remember that, I thought they were a group of friends, and I think I have stronger memories of the book, which starts with the characters as older and looking back, so that they know each other, but in this, it's actually really much more a group of 4 friends. We have Bill, Eddie, Richie, and Stan, and they're a group of 4 friends. And then the new kid is Ben, and then Beverly is the girl for all intents and purposes. Although Beverly was kick-ass, she was really good, and although she does end up needing to sort of be saved, which totally sucks, but she was intense and amazing, she and in a lot of ways fearless in some aspects, which is interesting because one of the strong themes of this is fear. What are you the most afraid of? That is what Pennywise sort of grabs onto and holds. And then we also have Mike in the group, who is homeschooled, and he works, I think, with his grandfather on a farm, or at least with animals, and he sort of gets pulled into the group both him and Ben get pulled into the group because they're being bullied rather intensely, and the other kids help them out. And there is moments where the kids aren't, like, sometimes some of the kids don't necessarily want to step in, and there was a moment where adults drove by a kid being bullied, and it's just like, whoa. So all of that I found really, it's funny, some of that I found more upsetting than the Pennywise stuff, because it's humans, like, and that's one of the things I found confusing, and maybe because it's part 1 of 2, is it wasn't clear what Pennywise was or is like, Pennywise is it, like the title, it, but is Pennywise a supernatural entity? Is Pennywise actually a clown? Pennywise can make people see stuff, but how? Like, it's inferred that he draws on people's fears and presents them with their greatest fears, but I wasn't clear what he was. Now, Ben does some history, and it does sound like there's something that happens every 27 years, so I'm sure chapter 2 is going to be 27 years later when they're 40. And then also there was, like, the people who created the town all mysteriously went missing, and I don't know if that worked on a 27-year cycle or what, and there was a big explosion. So it's not clear. Like, usually in horror that's supernatural based, usually they find out what is the instigation, or what is the entity, or what is the connection, and so far no idea. It's just it's Pennywise. It makes them scared, and can lure them in by fear, or in Bill's case, it lures him in by pretending to be Georgie, which is horrible. That scene was horrible. I was like, oh, like, you just feel for Georgie, you just really do. But yeah, but the one thing I really do feel like I wish that there was more character interaction and development with the entire group of friends. Now, I know 7 characters is a lot, plus we get townspeople. There's like a group of 4 bullies, and one of them has a stronger storyline, and then there's the parents and stuff like that. So it is a lot of people, but like Stan and Mike got almost like 0 attention. They both had like a scary scene, and then some scenes with the kids, but like sometimes they would have like they'd be in the scenes with everyone together, and neither of them would have lines for quite some time. Another thing that sort of pulled me out of the story was that the guy who plays Richie, who's the motor mouth, is one of the actors from Stranger Things, and that really threw me for a loop, which is totally not fair. I really try and resist being affected by casting like that, because I can't remember if Stranger Things and this came out around the same year. They're both set in the 80s, so you have this sort of like nostalgic horror thing, and it really works, it really resonates, it's going to resonate with people, but I'm like, to have someone who's the same actor in both things threw me off, right? Because his character is different, in Stranger Things, Richie's more of the Bill character, he's more of the the one who's willing to do anything, the one who's really centered on it, and in this one he's the bit of the denier and the motor mouth, so it's a bit different. But I will have to say, the guy who played Bill, oh my gosh, he was so good. His acting was so good, as well as Ben, as well as Beverly, and maybe that's why they focus, like, they were the 3 that get the most attention, and there is a love triangle, which I do not remember at all, and I don't, like, which, I don't know. The book is like from, I can't remember when the book came out. It was the 80s, I imagine. So it was pre all the current love triangles, but I guess it is quite a thing. But it is kind of frustrating. The one female character gets sort of wrapped up in this love triangle. She also gets wrapped up with this, at school, she has a bad reputation that's unfounded, and, and stuff like that, which is pretty brutal. And also, like, as I said, the bullying and the abuse in this one, it was intense. It was, it wasn't as intense as the scary stuff, because some of the scary stuff was truly scary. Like, I was scared. Like, there was a lot of things that just creeped me out. The tension level was good. The visuals were good. The only thing that sort of threw me off was some of the stuff with Pennywise. And I think this is more of just sort of, sometimes I find there's some, this is gonna sound weird, but I find like there's some awkward periods with visual effects. And I'm not saying the visual effects aren't good, they're good. But now that we're at the level where visual effects can pretty much show you anything, it makes it harder to believe what you're seeing is real, if that makes sense, right? Because they can, anything, like, you know, before you had the constraints of, say, practical effects, like there physically had to be something there, or you knew that there was limited amount, like if there was a visual effect that was using double exposure or something like that, it was very obvious it was a visual effect. Now it feels like anything can be created, and for me that breaks the momentum of feeling like what I'm seeing or what the kids are seeing could be real, or that they could be seeing it. You know, like it feels like it should open up doors, but for me it kind of throws me off. So there were some Pennywise things, mostly to do with scale. I'm a bit of a scale snob. I do. I'm just like, that wouldn't fit there. But in horror, sometimes you play with scale to throw things off. But there were just a couple. There was one thing where he spun a lot, and I was just like, that doesn't, it didn't read to me. But that's minor, very minor. Overall, I thought it was really good. I just wish we had more scenes with Stan and Mike. Hopefully there's more development with their characters in part 2. That being said, I do hope that there aren't flashbacks, or aren't a huge amount of flashbacks in part 2. I hope part 2 is mostly centered on the group as adults. I'm really curious to see the casting. I don't know anyone with the exception of, I know that Beverly is played by Jessica Chastain, and I think maybe Michael Good is in it. I don't know. It feels like just visually that he would be Richie. But I'm very curious as to who all of the characters are being played by, and but it is, the next part is long. It is almost 3 hours. It's 2 hours and 49 minutes. So that is really, really long. I'm gonna have to start it early in the day. With this one, I did start it early in the day, and I turned out all the lights and all that stuff. But by the time it was done, it was completely dark, and I was like, ah! But they did come to a bit of a resolve in this. I thought, on my first watch, I thought it was more of a resolve. I thought it was toast. Like, I thought it was gone, or they had defeated Pennywise. And with this, I felt like, I guess because you know there's a second movie, and I don't know if they kept that in the dark when they did like the marketing and stuff like this. I think it was just pitched as it wasn't pitched as It Chapter 1. I could be wrong on that. I'm not as up on that as I used to be, but yeah, so I'm curious on the casting. I'm curious on the story. I don't really remember the story for when they're adults, and what Pennywise will get up to, what the town of Derry will be like. Will any of their parents still be around? Will there a new set of kids? You know, like why would it go after them as opposed to kids? Maybe it does go after kids. I really liked the end scene of this one. That was very powerful, of everyone Bill, like, you know, making them agree to, if this happens again, that they will come back and work towards defeating it again. So yeah, those are my thoughts on It Chapter 1. I'm curious to see what Chapter 2 will be like. And and some of the effects, oh my gosh, so gory. This is definitely not for everyone, but I had fun. I made popcorn. I probably will make popcorn again. Gotta have some distraction, because it's intense, and I'm sure part 2 will be as well. So there are my thoughts. I will be back soon with Chapter 2. So we are now back to talk about the final chapter, which is the second chapter of It. I'm holding this green up because I'm going to show the screen, but I have to warn you, clowns, because that's what's there. So clowns in 3, 2, 1, or clown, shall we say. So I have now finished watching It Chapter 2. I actually watched it about a week ago, and ironically, or mettily, I am already starting to forget a little bit about it, so we shall see how this goes. Right off the bat, I think it's fair to say that I didn't enjoy it as much as the first film. The first film really had a bit of magic to it that I don't feel like was quite captured here. I think part of that might be some expectations. I really thought the first film was going to be the kid's journey and the second film was going to be the adult's journey, but as it turns out, we actually have a fair amount of flashbacks in this, which is, like, in one way good because we get to see more from the kids, and the kid actors are really good in this. I like the characters, but I actually really wanted to see the adult actors and their journey, because I feel like the kids one, what you get from it is you get to see kids being strong in a challenging situation. And although that also happens with the adults, one of the things that we see with the adults is the adult being scared, which is something that we don't always see with adult characters. So I feel like when we put it all together, it got, like, I felt like it might just be thematically stronger to have it more separate. And then also some of the flashbacks I found confusing as to figuring out when they were, because at the end of the first film, we're in, I think, September, and Beverly's going to move away, but she has some flashbacks, or she's in some other people's flashbacks. And I'm like, okay, when is this? Is this when the kids weren't talking to each other? Is this just like some other scary stuff with Pennywise? And then also because they're flashbacks, it's like, was it just something that happened that we didn't see, that didn't make the cut to the first? Like, that's more like logistical. Is it something that didn't make the cut to the first film? And so that became, I found it a bit jarring to go back and forth. I'm actually not, like, I'm not opposed to flashbacks, but I feel like there's also the power of storytelling, of someone telling their story of what happened to them, as opposed to us seeing other actors portray what happened. Because also when someone tells you a story, they might misremember it, so that can give some red herrings, which can be a good thing or a bad thing. And also they may or not be telling the truth. When you see a flashback, it's given as a truth. Now that gets a little weird in this instance, because one of the things that I didn't remember about the story, or I didn't know, or maybe they changed, was that when people come back, they didn't realize they had forgotten what had happened. So the story is set up that Mike stays in town, and 27 years later, as predicted in the first film, things start to happen again, and Mike, calls the phone tree and brings everyone home, almost everyone home. This will be spoilery, as all of the other bits of this have been spoilery, but there are big spoilers in this. And also, actually, so there's, I would say, I don't normally talk about trigger warnings in when I talk about films. There are two things that I think are important to know, like, one is that there is suicide, so that's a huge trigger warning, and I don't remember if that happened in the book. And then there is, and I'm pretty sure this did not happen in the book, there is a horrific hate crime in this against two gay men, and I was not prepared for that. And I don't feel that it was necessary, and it was just so bad. There is a light connection, a very light connection, and it is kind of saying that, and it's in the current, so it's in the, when the people are 27 years later, so it's supposed to be current day, and I guess it shows that some of the people of Derry really have not changed and they're bullies, or that what Pennywise does makes people amplify their horribleness. I'm not buying that, but it was so horrible. It was so horrible that and it's how the film opens, and I can understand if people were completely unreceptive after that point, because I just don't feel like we need to see it. Now, we do see a lot of pretty intense bullying in the first one, but this is adults versus adults, and some adults and kids versus two adult men, and it was just, I don't even want to think about it anymore, but I think it's important to know, because it's just, to see that level of homophobia and that level of hate, it's just, I was not expecting it, and did not welcome it. So there's that. So that made it have a bit of a rocky start for me, to be quite frank. And then we're let in with hearing, having Mike hears about this, and he calls everyone back. So one of the things that was I did enjoy from this one was getting to see the casting after, enjoying the young cast from the first film who would play their adult counterparts. And I knew Jessica Chastain was going to play Beverly, but I didn't know anyone else. And I didn't recognize all of the actors. off the top. And actually, there was one actor I didn't recognize, and I didn't want to look it up because I try not to use my phone when I'm watching movies. But the guy who played Ben, I was like, who is it? Like, who is it? And it was bothering me the entire time. And he kind of looked like Sawyer from Lost, the character Sawyer, but I knew it wasn't him. And I knew that I knew this actor like rather well, and I knew that he had like really strong emotional capacity, which he does, which is great for the character Ben. And it was just been driving me just bonkers. And it ends up he is Jay Ryan, and he was in Beauty and the Beast, the TV series, the redux of the TV series from like 2013, and I love that series as a Canadian series. It's also starring Kristen Kruk from Smallville, and now of, what's that Canadian show? Oh, I can't remember. There's one on right now. I think Helen Keith-Rainey is also in it. Anyway, so the guy who played Ben was from Beauty and the Beast, and every time he was on screen, I was just like, what do I know him from? So maybe I should have stopped and looked it up. But I never want to do that with a movie, especially if like there's especially a horror movie or anything speculative, because it might say that he was Ben and then like slash, I don't know, something else. And like all of a sudden we find it, I didn't know that Ben was going to turn into whatever. So anyway, bringing that back. So I thought he was really good casting, and I thought he did a great job as Ben. Also, I'm shocked that I didn't know that Bill was played by James McAvoy, and I thought that was really good casting as well. He had a really good handle on the character of Bill, but the kid that plays Bill was so good. Like, he was so good. It's one of my favorite things out of both of the two films was that kid's performance. He, yeah, so good. So yeah, and then the guy who played Eddie, I am not familiar with him. Is it Bill Hader? Anytime it's a comedian, I never know who it is. The rest of the cast, we have Isaiah Mustafa, who I wasn't familiar with. He played Mike, and then James Ranson, who played. He was in an Ethan Hawke horror movie. It starts with an S that I can't remember what it's called, and he played Deputy So-and-so. He was really good in that. And he played, he played Eddie in this. Richie was played by, Bill Hader, which I'm actually a little, like, I hear his name, but again, I don't watch a lot of comedy. He was great as Richie. So, but this one was, I don't know, there were some things that I enjoyed about it, but they all ended up being sort of a bit more minor things. Like, there was a really hilarious, some in-jokes and cameo stuff. Like, Stephen King plays a cameo of the pawn shop owner, and there's also this reoccurring joke about Bill, who becomes a writer, and there's this reoccurring joke that everyone loves his writing except for his endings, which is just, like, hilarious, because it's sort of like if you read Stephen King, they're really good stories, but then sometimes, the ending, and I have to say, it's horrible to say it, but I felt that way about this one too. Now, I feel really badly that I don't remember, like, what happened in the first the mini-series. I can't remember what the ending was from that, and I can't remember what the ending is from the book. So I imagine with all of the in-jokes that they changed the ending, but I was, like, not really buying this ending. It was quite out there. The inference is that, like, Pennywise or the entity or entities are, like, aliens? And I'm like, really? And then, like, one of the things that they were supposed to, Mike tries to get them to do is this, like, ritual, like Native American ritual, and I was like, oh man, I don't know, like, I just, but then he was like, yeah, I didn't think it would work, but like, you had to believe in something. It was just like, what? I was just like, I don't really know. Like, and there was lots of scary stuff and good stuff, and it was atmospheric and scary and all those things, but in terms of the ending, I was a little like, not sure, but I was with it. Like, it was, like, I will say, the ending was intense, and I was there, and I was like, I wasn't there, but it was just like, I felt what was going on with the characters and the challenges and how scared they were and how insurmountable this felt. But there was I did feel like there was some push-pull on whether or not people wanted to do it, because there is this element that when they left, they forget, and as they come back, they remember. And that was one of the best scenes, was at the restaurant when everyone meets up again and they all start to remember things again. That scene was formidable, and it ended up being really scary. And it was mostly, I don't think that there was any flashbacks yet. And I was like, I really wish that they had kept that tempo for the film, and because I really enjoyed it. But one of the things about them forgetting that I really just got me, because I felt like, oh, we got resolve in the first film, is that you relive the love triangle like drama between Beverly, Ben, and Bill. Although I think they dealt with that pretty well, because they actually did sort of have, because Beverly thinks it's Bill who's sent her the postcard, but it's actually Ben. So, and it's weird though, because they're like, I feel like from the film, Beverly was friends with Ben, but I don't know if she had feelings, like romantic feelings towards him, whereas she did have a history with Bill. But is it just, she had the history with Bill, so she thought about him, or who knows? But I thought they actually dealt with it quite well, because they did have a moment, Bill and Beverly did have a moment. It was kind of like, huh, like, there isn't magic here. So, but it was still heartbreaking. All the heartbreaking stuff was definitely, it felt like, with Ben. But then there was some just stuff that was like out of nowhere, like the whole, like you see some of the ramifications of what happens to the kids from the past, like the bully character. He didn't die. It seems like he dies because he falls down like a big thing, but he didn't. But it ended up that it was found out that he did. They did realize that he had killed his father, which happened in the first movie, but he ended up going to an insane asylum, or not an insane asylum, he went to an institution. He didn't go to jail. So I'm like, and I don't know if he saw any of the Pennywise stuff. Like, that could definitely make you, question things. So that felt weird, but then he escapes. And then that whole thing with him escaping, and like his childhood friend who appeared as a zombie who drove him around, like, all of that was like, this is just, I don't even know. Like, and it feels so over the top, and like, in some ways you feel like with a movie like this, you can never go too over the top. But for me, I just felt like I wanted to spend more time with the 7 characters, actually with 6, because there was a suicide. And so like, that's something that I actually didn't really know how I felt about it, because it was revealed at the very, 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 very end of the movie that that Stan kills himself, and that's revealed earlier. But it says that he did it so that they would stick together to counter it. And I was like, I don't know, like, did I feel like he would do that? Did I feel like, and also just the topic of suicide is challenging to have in film, in discussion. It's an important topic. I'm not saying it's not important. I just feel like it's one of those ones that sometimes it feels hard to talk about because the ramifications are final. So, that doesn't mean you should never have a depiction of it in film. But also did it work? And like, because sometimes everyone was like, no, I'm out of here, I don't care. And it does, when they hear the news, it does sort of bring them together a bit, but then they still go, I'm out of there. So it's kind of like, but then also, like, that doesn't, just because he said that doesn't mean it would be true, but because it's how the film ended, it felt like it should be, like he should have known, or not he should have, that, you know what I mean? Like, it's the resolve, right? It's the resolve. He did this so that they would be able to bind together to face it. So I'm not sure. Anyway, but yeah, so it was a bit all over, but I am glad that I finished it off. I am glad that I watched the 2 films in rather quick succession. I watched them within a week of each other, I think, and I think that was good, because knowing the story and the history really makes a big difference. So, but yeah, there were so many things that I was just like, aliens, really? And like ritual? Like they're gonna do a ritual? And like, I'm not sure about that. And the flashbacks didn't really work for me. I thought they were confusing. A lot of them I was like, is it people remembering things that actually happened? Or is it, you know, Pennywise playing with their memories? Or, you know, because some of them I was like, how could that person be there? Or when is this going? Like, when was this after that they got into an argument? Or when they banded, they couldn't be after September because Beverly wouldn't even be there. And they, you know, had put it to sleep or whatever, like they had conquered it for now. So it's just like, I don't really understand. It was just messing with their memory. So I thought some of that stuff was a little unclear, but generally speaking, I thought it was great casting. There were really good performances, but for me, I guess my challenges were really with some of the choices and some of the story, like some of it, and ironically, the ending. That is just too funny. So please let me know your thoughts on it. Did you enjoy it? Did you watch both of them like near each other like I did? Or because I can imagine coming to the second one like, you know, a year after watching the first and maybe it not all sticking. I can't decide if I want to watch read the book. It has been so many years, but it's just like I love the element of sort of like found family and friendship, but they took like, it's also kind of weird that they didn't remember each other. So it's a weird band of friends who, you know, didn't keep in touch, you know. I don't know, but childhood friendships is something that Stephen King really does do well. So I, you know, for me, the seeing that, you know, even in the flashbacks here was worth it. But also, you know, and also it was scary. I'm not gonna lie. It was scary. I was like, like, I was scared. So, but generally speaking, didn't enjoy as much of the first one, which is always a challenge. I think it's always too bad. But it lets me know if I want to rewatch it. I can, if I want, just rewatch the first one. And it was long. It was I think it's 2 hours and 50 minutes. 2 hours and 49 minutes. I had to start early, but it was still dark by the time it finished. Oh well, I am going to try and get better at that. So there are my thoughts. I hope you enjoyed this. Let me know if you like this style of vlogging. I know it is spoilery, it's just the nature of it. So it is one of the different kinds of film types of videos that I am enjoying doing. I also do my what I've watched recently, and those are spoiler free, but these ones are more like getting to the nitty gritty, and there was some nitty gritty to get to this one. So I hope that you enjoyed this video, and I will be back soon with another video. Thanks for watching.